Hello and welcome to Resilient Dog. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm looking forward to sharing all of this information with you. My name is Christy Jenkins and I'm a wellness coach and nutritional therapist. This course is the culmination of my nutritional expertise with my own experience with 3 dogs. I feel like this course is going to help your dog to have the healthiest, happiest, longest life possible. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. Okay, so this story really started with a dog named Chipper. Here he is. He's a little blue merle Aussie who we found wandering the road one summer. He seemed to be an unwanted or perhaps a discarded dog. We could not find his owners anywhere in the area or surrounding areas. So we welcomed him into our family, and he's the sweetest little guy. He's just a love. He loves people. He loves attention. He's sweet with all the other animals that we have, and he's been a great addition to our family. But it wasn't many months before we realized that there was something up with Chipper. He just wasn't well. He had coughing, he had runny eyes, he had a bunch of vague symptoms. And then one evening in late October, he had an attack of vestibular syndrome. I didn't actually know that's what it was called at the time, but he wouldn't come in. He was stuck out in the woods. He was unable to walk. He was extremely dizzy and discoordinated. So we brought him into the house, and here he is on the left, poor guy, laying on the floor. We were syringing water into his mouth and hand feeding him because he really couldn't get up. He has a little harness on because we were carrying him to get outside. And I took him to the vet. Indeed, he had vestibular syndrome, but beyond that, she diagnosed him with lymphoma or cancer and estimated that he probably had 1 or 2 weeks to live. And she suggested either euthanasia or taking him home and doing some palliative care. Normally, I would have gone with the euthanasia, just seeing the condition that he was in and realizing that he was an old dog and this is probably the end of his life. But for some reason, when I looked into his eyes, I saw him telling me, not yet, not yet. So I brought him home and I thought, I have nothing to lose by trying this, and I radically changed everything. I changed his diet. I added supplements in. I changed what he got for exercise when he was able to walk again. I changed the rhythm of his day, what he did and when he did it, and the results were tremendous. So on the right, you see 1 month later, here Chipper is hiking in the snow, keeping up with the other dogs, and he's still with us today. He's doing great. These are my 2 other dogs. I have Radar, who's a hound mix. He's about 2 years old, and he was plagued with chronic ear infections caused by yeast and other yeast issues. And it seemed like every spring we were bringing him into the vet and paying to have these ear infection treatments done. And it was kind of frustrating. I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to help him from getting these recurrent infections. And on the bottom left, you see little Roxy. She's a puppy in this picture. And she was plagued with colitis and explosive diarrhea for quite some time. It was impossible to find what to feed her. It seemed like everything upset her stomach. We changed diet many, many times, lots of different dog kibbles. And finally, it was implementing the things I'm going to share with you in this class that made the biggest difference for her. So the first question that I asked myself was, what is natural for dogs, right? And so I went back into history and learned that dogs evolved alongside humans. So it's theorized that ancient dogs actually chose to become domesticated and made a choice to cohabitate with people. And there were lots of benefits to this partnership. For example, hunting. It's easier to hunt with dogs helping you. There's many, many different breeds of dogs that are known as various types of hunters. And then dogs also benefit from the shared hunting duties because they get a more regular food supply when they're working with humans. So food was better for both species when they worked together. And then there's the aspect of security. Dogs have always helped humans to have more secure households, more secure sites of living, and also humans return the favor to dogs by giving them a higher level of security, a safer place to have their puppies, a safer place to live, and an aspect of protection to that. And then finally, there's shelter. Humans were masterful at finding good shelter and developing various forms of shelter, and dogs took advantage of that as well. So dogs evolved alongside of our campfires, and they ate what we ate, and they shared in the hunts that we participated in. So they had the same daily rhythms that we did. They got up when we got up, they slept when we slept, and they hunted when we hunted. So in asking what is natural for dogs, I realized that they had a diet that was probably largely based on meat and the spoils of the hunt, lots of organ meats, lots of bones, raw bones, and then they probably ate whatever else humans were eating. So berries, root vegetables, starchy vegetables, possibly handfuls of grain here and there, nuts and seeds when they can be found. And they had an omnivorous diet similar to that of people, although it probably remained largely based on meat. Most important aspect is that they were eating live food, real food, and whole food. In fact, the world's first commercial dog kibble was invented by an electrician whose name was James Spratt in 1860. And prior to that, dogs exclusively ate meat scraps, and table scraps, and lived primarily outdoors. Okay, so this cute little guy is representative of a dog named Bluey. This is not the real Bluey, but Bluey was an Australian cattle dog born in 1910, born in Victoria, Australia, and he lived to be 29 years old and 5 months. And in the Guinness Book of World Records, he holds the record for the longest lived dog on the planet. And he was a farm dog and worked with sheep and cattle. And this cute little red dog represents Maggie. Again, this isn't the real Maggie, but Maggie was an Australian Kelpie who died peacefully in her sleep at 30 years old. And again, she was a farm dog. She didn't make the Guinness Book of World Records only because her owners lost her paperwork and they couldn't prove when she was born. But according to them, she lived to be 30 years old and had quite a remarkably long life. So after learning about these dogs, I asked myself, what did Bluey and Maggie do? What was the secret to the incredible longevity that these dogs enjoyed? Well, first is that they had a diet of real farm fresh food. Both of them were eating probably the meat that was raised on the farm and a lot of farm raised produce because that's where they were living. Another incredible factor that they share is they both had daily exercise and not just a 30-minute walk. Maggie's owner, Brian McLaren, shared that she ran miles every day just following his tractor. She averaged about 3 miles crossing the farm each direction. And he figured that she probably ran about 12 miles a day, 7 days a week for over 2 decades. So that's a tremendous amount of exercise. Both of these dogs also had a strong purpose, a job to do. There were lots of animals on the farm that needed to be herded and looked after and taken care of. So they had a strong sense of purpose. Both dogs had exposure daily to sunlight, changes in weather and seasons. They went out and worked all day with their owners and came home when it was dark and probably slept pretty good. They had a low stress lifestyle. So although they were hardworking dogs, they didn't have a tremendous amount of stress. Stress meaning separation anxiety or artificial rhythms to their day or being in situations that cause anxiety for them. They likely had low exposure to chemicals, very little to no veterinary intervention beyond perhaps, the puppy shots, but no regular frontline treatments, for example. And finally, they likely had good genetics, these breeds or the lineage of dogs that came before them. So then we ask ourselves, or I ask myself, what turns on disease in dogs? So after doing some research and drawing on my knowledge of nutrition studies, I realized that many dogs today are lacking nutrients and polyphenols in their food. There's many chemical additives being added to the foods out of convenience to keep them shelf stable. They have low physical activity, and a perfect example of this is Chipper, who seemed tired all the time, and I used to let him lay around for most of the day because I thought he was tired and that was the right thing to do. And a big part of his recovery was actually getting him up and getting him outside and taking him for vigorous walks. So not easy walks, but walks through the woods where he has to navigate obstacles and get around trees and things like that. Stress is another thing that turns on disease in dogs, and we'll talk about the many forms that stress can come in. And then finally, the amount of environmental toxins that dogs are exposed to in our modern world. So that includes pesticides, chemicals, and pollutants. And that is another big factor in what causes diseases to start. What does inflammation look like in dogs? Well, one clue is all of these diseases end with itis. So itis comes from the Greek for inflammation, inflammatory conditions. And all of these diseases bring more dogs to the vet than any other reason. So we can see in the list, gingivitis is inflammation of the gums, uveitis of the eyes, gastritis of the stomach, colitis the colon, arthritis the joints, right? And as we go through, we see all of them end in itis and basically refer to the body part or system that's being affected. What do all of these itises have in common? Well, there's three things. One is I believe they're fueled by pro-inflammatory foods or a pro-inflammatory diet. And we'll get into what that means and what it looks like. Secondly, I think they're fueled by environmental toxins. So the many different ways that toxins come into our dogs' lives and how they affect them. And finally, I believe these itises are fueled by stress and a lack of healthy activity in dogs. This poor guy's chewing on his arm, he's so stressed out. So I love the dog in this picture. He's saying, "Bring me back to nature." And he looks so happy to be outdoors and in nature. So what is the plan? What is the resilient dog plan? Resilient dog means feeding the best diet possible. And we'll go into what that means and what it looks like and what the many variations are of a really good diet for dogs. It means that polyphenols are added daily, and I'll talk about how I integrate that, and it's super simple. It's something you can start doing today. It's about reducing stress, understanding the many forms that stress can arrive in and understanding how to reduce it. It's about honoring circadian rhythms, so letting your dog have a natural rhythm to his day that honors his inner circadian rhythms and supports his metabolism and hormones. It's about healthy movement and exercise that gets your dog's blood pumping, gets his heart pumping, and helps to increase longevity. It's about adding in supplements as needed to address health concerns that you're already dealing with or to prevent health concerns from happening. Basically keeping those diseases from turning on. And finally, it's about detox and reducing the toxic load. So minimizing the exposure that your dog has to environmental toxins. And we'll be talking specifically about what to do about hard choices like fleas and ticks and vaccinations. So again, I'm so excited that you're here. I have so much to share with you, a lot of good information, and I hope that this is beneficial to your dog. I hope that you see your dogs living healthier and happier lives after taking this course, and I'm so excited to move forward.